Hey everyone, thanks for joining. Thanks for coming out early on day one at web3 and at the DGOV node. I'm Ryon Nixon. I'm going to be speaking about Proof of Stake Alliance, and I'll leave a little bit of time at the end for some questions. Let's get into it a little bit. What is Proof of Stake Alliance? Why am I so excited about this? I think a lot of legal issues, things in the space, at least with me, I get engaged after the fact to kind of deal with an issue, to clean it up. With POSA, we're trying to get ahead of favorable legal and tax treatment and some regulatory clarity with respect to stakable assets and proof of stake participants generally. So who are we? We're a nonprofit advocacy group based in the US. Again, the goal is favorable legal and tax treatment and just clarity. And how are we going to go about doing that? We're going to be doing that with educating, delivering a unified message to regulators and to policymakers on the Hill, and hopefully afterwards internationally. So how did POSA come about? POSA came about when one validator was put together a delegation agreement for some large fund to stake their assets, looking at the US securities regime. What was the issues with this? The issues are that a delegation agreement may or may not be an investment contract under the current laws. What does that mean? That means only accredited investors could stake their assets. That's not the intent, or what I think the space is looking for as far as that happening. So they spoke to a few large law firms. How can we address the situation? How can we get some proper treatment of these assets? How can we not have a delegation agreement be an investment contract such that the whole space in the US is basically torpedoed? They came back with a large quote. Ryon, being a startup, said, hey, this is a big problem. Why don't we socialize the costs and spread it out to everybody in the community, and hopefully, again, have a unified message so we can get this handled. So based on Joe from Ryon, Evan, their GC at the time, they formed POSA, and since that time, Evan is now the president of POSA. Here are some of the board members. That's me, Matt Perona from Polychain, and another Ryon member, Santiago. Here is some of the current POSA membership. Again, it is a slice of participants in the proof of stake space. We have top layer ones like Solana, like Tezos. We have Polychain Labs, we have validators like Ryon, and even just participants that don't fit into any of these pegs, such as Multiplied, which is a marketing company. So all of us are joining together, trying again to come to a unified message, advocate, and get some clarity and hopefully favorable tax treatment for these issues for stakable assets. So let's go back to the examples. I think this is the most helpful slide. Delegation agreement. If this is indeed an investment contract, then again, only accredited investors can get in on it. It's subject to certain other transfer restrictions. How is anybody, except for funds, except for wealthy individuals, going to be able to participate and stake their assets with a validator if this isn't handled properly? I mean, what are we going to do, right? So, delegation agreements between delegators and validators should not be classified as an investment contract. Things get a little trickier in the tax space. So here's another example. Tax treatment of staking rewards. This is a very simple example. You have a delegator, delegates to a validator, validator stakes right to the protocol kicks back a reward. Let's say the protocol takes a piece of that reward itself, as some layer ones can do, kicks back to the validator kicks back to the delegator. How many taxable events is that? 1, 3? What kind of income is that? Is that regular income? Is that capital gains? So what POSA is doing currently is we're advocating for this to be qualified dividends, right, which would give you capital gains treatment. We want this to be one taxable event. We want it to be taxed when the delegator actually receives the staking rewards, because I mean, you could think of a situation where you get $4 in dots, but because of market volatility, when you finally take it out, it's $2 in dots. So why should you be taxed at $4 when now it's worth $2? It's untenable. It can't work. and I mean it's a major issue. So here's some of our current initiatives. Again, tax treatment. We're preparing a memo, sort of like just a persuasive legal document to, again, argue that the taxation of stakable assets, stakable rewards, should be capital gains. This document is going to be put in front of policymakers, the IRS, the SEC, everybody on the Hill. The investment contract issue. The SEC is actually, and this is certain, looking into the issue of whether or not a delegation agreement is an investment contract under the U.S. securities regime. That's a big issue. We are working with another law firm to put together a white paper to argue that they don't fit within that rubric, and the policy behind that, the investment contract analysis, this will be highly detrimental to stakable assets. We're working with a DLX law. They just recently released another no action letter that was given the green light from FinCEN. We want to work with them to say that validators are not MSBs, subject to strict, crazy compliance and reporting requirements, and allowing these startups in this nascent space to be able to operate. Finally, we're working with a nice lobbying group to just keep the conversation going, to make sure it's put in front of regulators, it's put in front of policymakers to keep it top of mind. The Blockchain Association is great. They have a ton of advocacy efforts. POSA was formed to focus on specifically this actual issue, and that's why we think it's very important. So, if it's a U.S.-based advocacy effort, how does it reach out here? How does it reach to Asia? Well, if I think a lot of people know, when there isn't legal or regulatory clarity, other jurisdictions will look to ones that do have opined, have come out with some sort of treatment of an asset, of a rule, or whatever. So in this situation, if we persuade some favorable, if we get favorable tax treatment, let's say, we'll look to other jurisdictions and say, hey, look, we got this passed for XYZ reason, you guys should do the same. Conversely, if I think a lot of people in the space know the SEC has been slow on a lot of things. So if another jurisdiction does come out with something favorable, we'll again take that and keep that in front of them to try to persuade them to do the same. Yeah, that's it. I know this is a lightning talk, so try to do it quickly. It's a stake. Just trying to be funny. If you have questions, you can join POSA as a member. You can join them as an advisor. If you have some value you can add, if you have some perspective, if you want to help be a thought leader in the space, please reach out. Here's my contact info. And yeah, that's about it. I'll open it up to questions.
Can we take some of that experience and apply to DAO space somehow? Yeah. Is some of that applicable to DAOs?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think decentralized governance, I think this is kind of a niche piece of it. I guess our effort's more about just keeping it alive, making sure, all of these large layer ones that are either mainnet and about to launch can survive. I think maybe that would affect DAOs in such a way that, that all of these networks would work together. But yeah. I mean, maybe it's directly on point.
And when we talk about staking, there's the projects like Dash, for example, right? And does it now bring any legal implications to the Dash owners of masternodes or something when they vote for different decisions? Are they now being a legal entity in this way?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I wanted to give kind of just very basic, easy to understand examples. Yeah, if they do vote, does that make them a legal entity? What does that mean? What does it mean if a validator is based internationally and you're a US-based person and you delegate to them? How is that treated? I mean, there's a lot of very, very complex issues that are grown out of this. And it's our opinion, if we don't get ahead of them, I mean, they're never going to rule, right? And then it's going to keep the Wild West going. And when they do put out something, they could very much like destroy, right, proof of stake market in the U.S., which is a huge market. It could have ripple effects internationally. So yeah.
One more question. Which jurisdiction are you looking into? Is there any other jurisdiction in the world that you would be looking up to, or are you the main one and everybody looks up to you?
Yeah, good question. So POSA is very new, recently formed maybe 6 weeks ago. We've been really pushing to get, again, a unified voice. So that's why I think we've done an excellent job with the amount of membership we have right now. We think the U.S., is probably the main jurisdiction that we could push some of this on. We are very much open if there is, another lobbying effort that wants to combine forces, share resources, say based in Europe or elsewhere. But yeah. I mean, we know for certain through conversations that while the SEC is looking into some of these like issues which could hurt the space, they're really not focused on any sort of like this is the way to treat it. This is the way to like keep it alive, right? We want to not have them be a large obstacle again, right? Like they were in the ICO space. So we think it's a major issue, and yeah. So.
Anybody else? Any questions? Thank you, Ryan. Thank you so much.